Today's subject is an old route in TS Classic, but it's debatable whether or not this thing has aged well. This is my 2 cents on Dovetail's Riviera Line Exeter to Paignton add-on, a short route that features both seaside and hilly terrain with one member of the controversial Pacer train family. This route was released in February 2014, and you can still buy it on Steam, where it costs $30 New Zealand dollars at full price. It's one of TS Classic's many linear routes, only including the 28 miles, or 45 kilometres of track from Exeter St David's to Paignton. As for what time period the route is set in, I'm guessing it's somewhere between 2010 and 2014. In any case, the stations on this route are as follows: Exeter St David's, Exeter St Thomas, Star Cross, Dawlish Warren, Dawlish, Teignmouth, Newton Abbot, Torquay, and Paignton. The original Riviera Line DLC was made long before the construction and opening of Marshbarton Station. It takes around 50 to 55 minutes to complete a full run from Exeter St David's to Paignton if you stop at all stations. Throughout the journey, you pass the site of 2 closed stations, namely Exminster and Kingscarswell. By default, the motive power seen is a bit underwhelming. The route itself only includes the Class 143 Pacer and Class 43 HST, with the 143 being a new addition to the game at the time. As for the HST, this was not a new model, but rather just the old Kuju-era model recycled from the European Loco and Asset pack. Alongside the Exeter to Paignton route itself, Dovetail released another livery for the Class 143 on Steam Marketplace. This is the BR Provincial Sector Blue livery, but at a full price of $6 New Zealand dollars, it's too expensive for what it is. Credit where it's due, DTG did alter the model to have different seats and an older headlight style, so it's not just a repainted clone of the modern-day FGW variant, in which case Dovetail would probably pass it off as some kind of what-if heritage unit. Apart from the price, the one other thing I don't like about the Provincial 143 is the shade of blue, which looks way too bright compared to the real livery. There's a few locomotive and multiple unit add-ons released after the Riviera Line that also come with scenarios for this route. The locomotives are Dovetail's standalone Class 35 High-Mech and Class 52 Western, along with the GWR Class 460 in British Railways condition, released before Riviera in the 50s. I don't have the standalone Class 35 pack, because I got that locomotive in the more recent Western Hydraulics pack instead, and said pack also includes the Class 42 Warship and Class 52 Western. As for the multiple units that come with Riviera Line scenarios, these are the Network Southeast Class 159 and Cross Country Class 220, although the latter appears to have been discontinued. In any case, I always preferred the Just Trains Voyager over Dovetail's version. Besides the default scenarios, you can also download community-made scenarios on Steam Workshop or other sites, although I don't really bother with most of the Workshop scenarios anymore due to their age and use of now outdated rolling stock and reskins. Years ago, Armstrong Powerhouse made 2 scenario packs for the Riviera Line, one themed around modern image operations between 2011 and 2014, while the other was themed around the British Rail era, more specifically the 1980s. Sadly, all of AP's old scenario packs are now discontinued, as are all but one of their old sound packs, for reasons I don't remember. The Class 52 sound pack also came with 1 scenario for the Riviera Line, and the Valenta HST Enhancement Pack has 3 scenarios for this route. If modern image routes aren't your cup of tea, then there's also a Steam-era version of the Riviera Line available in TS Classic. This version is set in the 1950s, and was released in 2015 as part of the Train Simulator 2016 bundle, but you can now buy this route on its own. The route comes with 5 different Great Western steam locomotive types, but the quality of the included motive power is very inconsistent. The modified Hall is the absolute worst of the quintet, in my opinion. I don't particularly like the Class 143's default sounds, especially where the engines and throttle lever movements are concerned. I've still got the old Armstrong Powerhouse/Wagons Class 142, which also acted as a sound pack for the Class 143. Unfortunately, the 142 sounds don't apply to the separately sold Provincial Blue livery. The 143's cabside windows do not open, unlike a lot of other locomotives and multiple units in this game. And although the real Pacers are notorious for their bouncy ride, the 143 in TS Classic doesn't really lurch and sway at all. In other words, she's an unrealistically smooth rider. I used to think the HST bundled with Exeter to Paignton was compatible with AP's now discontinued Class 43 MTU enhancement pack, but it seems I was wrong. I'm pretty sure these old sounds are from a Valenta engine, in which case they are inaccurate for a first Great Western HST on an early to mid 2010s era route. By default, the 143 and HST are both supplied only in First Great Western liveries, FGW being the old name for the train operating company that runs the Greater Western franchise. They rebranded as Great Western Railway in 2015, and continued using 8 143s on the Riviera Line for another 5 years. The Great Western Pacers were all withdrawn in December 2020, with 5 of them being saved for preservation. As for where I got the GWR livery in TS Classic, that's a reskin made by Super Albs. His reskins are still available as of early July 2024, but he's no longer making new ones. These days, the rail scene along the Exeter to Paignton section comprises Class 150 and 158 sprinters, or Class 166 networkers on the Exmouth to Paignton commuter services, shortened Class 43 HST sets or Hitachi IETs on regional services from Cardiff to Plymouth or Penzance, and the Class 800 and 802 IETs on long-distance services from London Paddington to Paignton, Plymouth, Newquay or Penzance. You'll also see cross-country's Class 220 and 221 Voyagers on this line, running services from Penzance, Plymouth and Paignton up to Northern England or Scotland. Thinking back to the Class 802, I made a scenario featuring said unit as part of this review. It's available to download as a Google Drive link in the description. DLC requirements are in the README file. Because I don't have the 2019 version of Just Trains' Voyager, I've used the original version in this scenario instead. As far as I know, JT's original Voyager Advanced pack is discontinued. Despite the restrictive linear nature of the default route, I still like the Riviera Line for its numerous iconic landmarks and pleasant coastal scenery, especially along the seawall between Teignmouth and Dawlish. You'll see plenty of waves along the coastline here, but they don't look very convincing. Further up the line, at Dawlish Warren, you pass by some assets that represent camping coaches and a Funder Park. The latter also features a pirate-themed mini golf course, which has much better detail than the rest of what's supposed to be Funder Park. At Star Cross, the next station up from Dawlish Warren, you pass by an old pump house that was built for Brunel's infamously unsuccessful atmospheric railway. This route is significant on a semi-personal level because my parents went through Dawlish and onto Torquay in the 1990s. It was either 1996 or 1998, I can't remember exactly when. One of Torquay's claims to fame is being the setting for the classic, but short-lived, British sitcom called Fawlty Towers. As for the speed limits, there's a long section with a 100 mph limit between Exeter St Thomas and Star Cross, but everywhere else is a lot slower by comparison. The Class 143 has a top speed of 75 mph, but there are several locations throughout the route where the speed limit is around 60 or lower. Indeed, the 143's acceleration leaves a lot to be desired, and even when the speed limit is 75 or higher, there's not always enough space before the next station to reach top speed. Personally, I think the limited route coverage of the default Riviera Line is its weakest aspect. Like I said earlier, you only get that short section from Exeter St David's to Paignton. Not even the Avocet line to Exmouth is included. While I still like the contrasting scenery between the coastline through Dawlish and the hilly section between Newton Abbot and Paignton, it's a shame that Dovetail didn't bother extending the route coverage themselves. Well, actually, Dovetail did extend the track past Paignton and down to Kingswear, but for some reason, they only added the scenery as far as Goodrington Sidings, just south of Paignton Station. Thinking back to the Riviera Line in the 50s route, it's interesting to note that Dovetail did put in the scenery all the way to Kingswear, so why they didn't do this for the modern image version is anyone's guess. In any case, the line from Paignton to Kingswear is now a heritage railway in real life. There's a freeware route extension available that's built on the default Riviera Line, but the route coverage is extended to Axminster, Exmouth, Oakhampton and Penzance, although the scenery on the West of England main line only extends as far as Honiton, and only as far as Liskeard for the Cornish main line, while the St Ives branch also has full scenery. I'll include a link to said route extension in the description. It's called Railways of Devon and Cornwall V11, and although I don't revisit this route too often, my favourite services to run here are a tie between Exeter St David's to Oakhampton and Plymouth to Gunnerslake. The trouble is that this route does have a large amount of payware requirements. DP Simulations also have a freeware route that features Exeter St David's. This is the Barnstaple to Exeter line, which also includes the short, but steeply graded section to Exeter Central and St James's Park. I haven't driven on the Tarka line in a fair while, but from memory, I think it's a nice and relaxing route on which to run the Class 143, or any other DMUs that are suitable for this line. Two stations in particular stuck out in my memory, namely Newton St Sires and Portsmouth Arms. Considering just how good the route coverage is on the extended Railways of Devon and Cornwall V11, it makes the default Riviera line look very silly by comparison. But despite that situation, I still think Dovetail's Exeter to Paignton route is fine, especially on the coastal section between Dawlish Warren and Teignmouth, but some of the scenery details haven't aged well. I can still recommend the Riviera line to other TS Classic players who don't have it yet, preferably with the extended RDC V11 as well. Now if only we could get a new/overhauled Class 143 model in the game.